Well, good morning. Again, welcome. I know if you are a guest with us, you may be going, man, this is an unusual, kind of unique service this morning, and you're right. We have been walking through a series together, and we haven't deviated for that. We've just provided some practical application in a different way this morning, but we've been walking through the series called Roots, which talks about covenant membership. What does it mean to be a follower of Jesus and to love his church well? And when we talk about being a follower of Jesus, we talk about being a disciple. And a disciple is one who abides in Jesus, who's becoming like Jesus, and living like Jesus. And so this morning, we're going to give you some real practical application of what it looks like to live like Jesus. Again, we are not, the church is not to be a vendor of religion. Rather, the church is a sent people. And so we're to live like Jesus in every aspect of our life. And so you've gotten to taste a little bit this morning, whether that be from El Salvador and Maritza and the opportunity we have, parents, families, take one of these boxes, great discipleship opportunity with your kiddos to build one of those boxes. Or secondly, what you've heard from Saul and Madam Morris and the over 200 kids that they currently have and have had well over 1,000 kids over that 50-year span of time. And then we're also going to bring up a special panel this morning that's going to talk about human trafficking. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, why are we hitting these highlights? Well, the baseline is this, is that when God created the world, he created us in his image. And when he saw us and when he created us, he said, man, I did a good job. I did a really good job. And because he created you and me, we know that there is value and worth in every human life. So this morning, as we continue this practical application of what it means to live like Jesus, let me invite our panel up here, and I'll introduce them as they come. If you would give them a hand, they're coming from Arlington Police Department, Homeland Security, and then an NGO locally here. Again, we're glad you're here. They're having deja vu since this is the second one. Good to see you guys again. How are you? Special Agent. Well, again, thank y'all for being here. Sweet, sweet time in the first service. And thank you again for sharing with us. I know some of the things that you guys are dealing with and walking with on a regular basis, it's heavy. And anytime you talk about it, there's an aspect of that heaviness that comes with that. And so we're grateful for you guys being with us. And so part of this weekend is Faith in Blue Weekend, which is across the country. And here in Arlington, there are over 114 events just here this weekend for Faith in Blue. And what that ought to communicate to you is that the Arlington Police Department has a deep passion to connect with the community. And beyond that, the faith-based community. And that's something unique and special that not every city has. And so thank you for your leadership in that. But let me introduce everybody. So this is Chief Al Jones of the Arlington Police Department. And by the way, we got the shot in at New York last service, so we'll do it again. Last year, New York was the only other city in the United States that had more events. But given the size of New York and the size of Arlington, we whooped them percentage-wise. And so, well done. I tell you guys all the time that Arlington is not a small city. It's one of the larger cities in the United States, which means that Chief Jones gives leadership to the 46th largest police department in the nation. That's almost 1,000 sworn officers. That's huge. That's big. So, thank you. And to his right is Sergeant Tark Milisevich. And I'm glad I got permission to call you by your nickname, which is Tank, and which seemed obvious as you were walking across stage why you would be called Tank. And Sergeant Milizovich, he oversees the heat unit here in Arlington, which is a human exploitation and trafficking unit here. And so he sees what we don't want to pay attention to a lot of times, and he's going to share with us. And parents, this will be really helpful for you as you listen to his heart and the realities of what's happening. And then to my furthest left here is Special Agent in Charge Lester Hayes of Homeland Security. And so he is the SAC over all of Oklahoma and a huge portion of Texas, 128 counties in Texas as well. So you can imagine just the span of that. And we're grateful that you're here, and we look forward to learn more about Homeland Security and that partnership. And then you brought subject matter expert and Special Agent Jason Stewart as well, who is part of your team. And my mind is still blown, Jason, from the stats that you shared in the first service. I was thinking through what's a follow-up question, and my mind is still blown. So maybe it'll come to me, but we are so grateful for your work here. And then a new local friend, Amanda Pettit, and Amanda is the executive officer of Rescue Hill, which I was embarrassed to know when I met her this week that Rescue Hill has been in Arlington right around the 1900s. It's one of the oldest ministries in all of Arlington and is the only ministry that specifically deals with human trafficking here locally. So thanks for being with us this morning. So Chief Jones, you see things from a 10,000-foot view, but you also see things, on a granular level too. Talk to us a little bit about what's human trafficking. What does that look like from the position that you're in?
Sure. So as you did say, Arlington is one of the 46 largest cities in. With that comes big city issues, and part of it is the human trafficking element. We've had, and what I would say is human trafficking is probably one of the oldest crimes known to mankind, and it's still in. But what we're seeing now is they're operating a little different. They don't walk the street as they normally did. They're doing things online. So we have to do things a little different. So back in April, we started a pilot program with the HEAT team. We actually did a reorganization within our department, taking some of our CACU detectives and some of our vice detectives in, who really was focusing on the human trafficking level, but now we just gave them a specialized assignment. Was specifically going straight after the human trafficking here in Arlington. Think about these numbers, and it's not just here in Arlington that we're seeing human trafficking. We're talking about all across the world. There's about 25 million people that are being human trafficked, and that's an industry of $150 billion a year. That's a lot of money, and that's a lot of people being trafficked. So we just started trying to do something different here in Arlington. Through this human trafficking unit, we actually have 4 elements that we focus on. The first is about making sure we provide some prevention. That's about educating our community, educating the school systems, educating some of the local businesses like the hotels where we see most of the trafficking. The second component that we're focusing on is protection. We want to make sure that we are protecting these survivors or these women, these kids or men, whoever's being human trafficked. We want to make sure that we're getting them out of that lifestyle, providing them resources so that they can have a successful life. The third component of what the HEAT team does is is making sure that they develop a strong case against these predators who are taking advantage of the weak in the community. And we want to make sure that we're giving them the resources so that they can actually bring a successful prosecution. And then the final thing is about partnerships. I can tell you, as a chief, we can't do this great work by ourselves. We need partnerships like the Homeland Security and Rescue Hill and all of the other non-governmental entities across the city. We need your help. We need the partnership, and I think this is why we're here today having this conversation with you, because we need you to be on board to help us in this fight.
Thank you. I mean, incredible responsibility. The breadth of just what's happening within our city is mind-blowing. And I want to come back to you here in a second and for you to kind of share with us what are some simple ways, you know, as a faith community, as believers, to be able to step into this space appropriately, where we're staying in our lane, but we're also helping. And I know that one of those ways is going to, you know, as we kind of transition to you, Amanda, and talk a little bit about Rescue Hill, I mean, you've been leading a very practical ministry that loves these victims well. So tell us a little bit about the gospel centricity of what you're doing at Rescue Hill and how that partnership kind of plays itself out among these other entities.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having us today. Like your pastor said, Rescue Hill has been around since the early 1900s. Originally operated for 35 years, turned into an orphanage, and then has been dormant. All happened on the UTA property. So many years ago, actually I was blessed to have somebody from El Salvador, because that's where my work started. And we started Rescue Hill. We were seeing that there was gaps in services. We were missing advocacy for adult women. There was nothing like an in-between piece of long-term care and the recovery. We didn't have emergency beds. And so I had the option to go to Serbia and serve on the mission field. And Rescue Hill came about, and I really believe God led me to Rescue Hill. So we stayed. We opened emergency beds right here in Arlington, started working with law enforcement, building out other organizations that we work with. We say we're about innovation, collaboration, and stabilization. So today we do advocacy, we have emergency beds, and we have a stabilization home, which is 30 to 90 days. Oftentimes we receive from our partners at Homeland Security, we receive from Arlington PD. They'll call, say we have a woman, hey, can you help? And we answer our phone. And we don't just respond in those ways. It's a relationship, it's a lifetime. Like, we don't say goodbye, we say see you later, because we want to be present in their life. We want to be their safe community. And your pastor said it in the last service. I'm sure he's going to say it again, so I don't want to steal your end line there.
Go.
What did you say? It was brilliant about the church, that we should be in those dark places, that we are called. And I remember many years ago, I looked around and I looked at our law enforcement partners and I thought, shoot, they're doing what the church should be doing. And so we've said, how can we help? How can we be a part of it? And it's been one of the most life-giving pieces of Rescue Hill, has been working with Homeland Security, been working with Arlington PD, because they don't, yes, it's their job, but they see every woman in front of them with value, and it's an example to us.
I love that. I'm looking forward to learning more about Rescue Hill, and glad that you have a table out there with some information, because they're just some practical things that any one of us can step into. Glad you're here. Special Agent Lester Hayes, man, you see it all. I know that when we think of Homeland Security, we typically think of airports and border, but peel back the onion a little bit so that we understand, the breadth of what Homeland is doing, and then how those partnerships are interacting with local entities like APD, Rescue Hill. Tell us a little bit about that.
Definitely. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here. I really appreciate Chief inviting us here to speak to you as well. Sometimes I think we have a little bit of a marketing crisis because a lot of people think, well, what's Homeland Security Investigations and why are they here talking to us? So we are the investigative arm of the Department of Homeland Security, which I'm sure most of you in the room know what that is. So I have approximately 300 agents, criminal research specialists, and administrative personnel that work with me, as the pastor said, to govern all of northern Texas and the entire state of Oklahoma. We have 400 statutes, federal statutes, that we are told that we need to enforce across over 100 plus counties here in northern Texas and in Oklahoma. Some of the things that we investigate definitely are border related: human smuggling, narcotics trafficking, financial investigations, counterproliferation investigations. I know you're like, what is that? Dual use goods, items that we don't want to fall into the wrong hands. And the list goes on and on. Definitely cyber investigations dealing with crimes against children. And of course, one of our top priorities is human trafficking. Now, you heard me say I have about approximately 300 people to work with and cover that large area. So it's vital that we partner with our state and local law enforcement, especially here in Arlington, to combat the issues that we're having to deal with. And whenever you hear the term task force, that means you have many different law enforcement entities that have come together to deal with a specific problem that we all feel is vital to protecting the communities that we live in. And today, of course, is the human trafficking issue. So I definitely brought with me a subject matter expert who can talk to you and give you some of that shock and awe that I'd like for you guys to leave with, so that you understand what it is that we do. Now, there was another agent who was here as well. He had to leave, but both agents that showed up here with me today, along with my public affairs officer, Dexter Henson, not only did they come, they live this, they eat it, they sleep it, they breathe it, it's who they are. They brought their families with them as well. So I don't like to miss an opportunity to thank the families for supporting them and making them who they are. Thank you very much.
Well, talk to us a little bit about that shock and awe. Part of the value of us being able to get together is not just the awareness, but to really understand that in our backyard, this is happening. And I know we have the tendency to we'd rather just bury our head in the sand. And the reality for us to be effective as a gospel-centered community, we need to understand the gravity of what's going on. And so, hurt our heart a little bit. Tell us what's happening.
Well, I can see from this morning that, can you guys hear me okay? I can see that from this morning the dynamics have changed a little bit. We have the younger generation in the room, and I'm super happy to have you here.
Yes.
Is it me? It was me. I'm super happy to have you here with us, so you get a chance to hear what we're talking about. But as far as the shock and awe value, talking about partnerships, we've run numerous operations where we target and we focus our law enforcement efforts on identifying and arresting individuals that are, what's the politically correct word I need what to say it with? Yeah, I don't want to say that word, but I'll say it. Who are commercial sex acts. That's what they're looking for online. So we target them. And we partner with Arlington PD and other law enforcement entities in the Dallas-Fort Worth area to go out, identify them, arrest them as well. But we try to hit it from a two-prong approach, whereas we work with Rescue Hill in trying to rescue the individuals who are victims of human trafficking. So that's where they come into play, and they're vital to what we do, because I don't have the funding from DC to give these individuals everything that they need to walk away from that lifestyle. So if we go out and we rescue someone who's been human trafficked, well, we're taking away their phone, we're pulling them away from what they seem as their safety and their security. Well, when you do that, you have to provide that safety and security to them so they're willing to stay away from that lifestyle. And that's where Rescue Hill comes in. They'll provide them with a safe place to stay away from that human trafficker. They'll provide them with the things that they need: shelter, food, counseling, and eventually help them to realize the dreams that they've always had, no matter what those dreams might be. So it's definitely a team approach when you look at those things, and we try to address all of the things that we need to address to make sure our communities are safe. So I'll let my special agent give you some more shock and awe when it comes to the numbers and it comes to the money that is made from human trafficking.
Well, good morning, and thank you all for having us. It's a pleasure to be here in front of you today. So, as far as our task force, the Homeland Security Investigations Dallas North Texas Trafficking Task Force, we try to attack the human trafficking market from an asymmetrical way, if you will. So, including our partners with Arlington Police Department and Rescue Hill, we're able to design and execute operations that are focusing on the various sectors of the commercial sex market. So many of you may have noticed in the news the other day, our partners at Arlington and ourselves, we conducted a week-long, what we call commercial sex demand reduction operation over a 5-day period, where we were able to identify and arrest 134 men and women that were attempting to solicit the purchase of commercial sex. I think what's more worrisome, because that number's pretty shocking if you think about it, but what's even more worrisome is to get to that number, my team of undercovers had to engage in chat with over 1,000 men seeking to solicit that commercial sex transaction, right? We had 134 show up, but we had engaged in conversations with a lot of people trying to engage in this activity. And furthermore, as we all know, in Arlington, Dallas-Fort Worth area, it's one of the fastest growing metroplexes in the country. We've got people relocating from all around the country and the world to come here for obviously legitimate purposes. But another issue we see in the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex is, on an average 30-day span in this market, we have over 80,000 commercial sex ads online right now selling individuals for commercial sex. And often, especially on the John stings, as we call them, when we arrest the commercial sex buyers, some members of the community do ask us, well, what if it's two consenting adults, right? Then what's the problem? Yes, I understand it's illegal, but is there really a problem? And one of my replies to that is, never once did any of these men who were soliciting my undercover, right, did they question us to see if we were being trafficked. That's never come up in either of those conversations. Okay, so that's an issue. Going back to the commercial sex ads, so there's 80,000 ads right now in the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex. Let's take one victim from those ads, right? If she's forced to contact men 10 times a day at $100 a transaction, that's $1,000 a day. That's $7,000 a week, $364,000 a year, leading to a multi-billion-dollar market in this area alone. Okay, so it is a huge problem that we're trying to attack from different parameters, again, using what we call is a multidisciplinary care team. And what that is, we were able to navigate all of the government red tape that all of you understand, and we were able to sign memorandums of understanding with our headquarters and organizations like Rescue Hill and local police departments and our other partner non-government organizations, so that for the first time as a federal agency, I can actually share a limited amount of law enforcement information about our victims so that Amanda can better serve that victim. And why is that important? okay? When I arrest a trafficker and I put handcuffs on him in the Northern District of Texas, where we prosecute most of our suspects out of, we have a 38-month prosecution time from handcuffs to conviction. Well, 38 months, 3 years, that is a long time to try and maintain a victim and guide her or him through that prosecutorial process. And it's a very traumatic event for our victims. So we try to take a trauma-informed, victim-centered approach, working with Amanda and her advocates, right, to where they have an advocate and they have the agent that's investigating the case. And I'm going to be there for the entire 38 months with them, holding their hand through that prosecution. And we're going to be that bridge to the prosecution team who sit at a round table with us as a partner who are dedicated to prosecuting these cases. That's all they work as well. So they're subject matter experts in their own right in the law, but in prosecuting these cases and just how traumatic it is for these victims when a case goes to trial. And I will also give credit to the U.S. Attorney's Office that works with this, because we're also one of the few districts in the United States that when I arrest you for a federal charge of human trafficking, we are not pleading that down. When you get convicted, you're going for trafficking. It's not being pled down. So we have an inordinate amount of trials in this district because the stakes are so high. Because when you're looking at multiple life sentences, you might as well go to trial anyways. So Amanda understands that. Amanda has helped many of our victims navigate that process and navigate the many continuances and the issues that often arise in trials. And you also have to keep in mind that many of our victims don't live in this area, so we have to fly out and interview them on multiple occasions. Amanda has gone with us. Rescue Hill has gone with us to conduct operations around the country. And so, again, we would not be able to do what we do without organizations like Amanda's or the Arlington Police Department. And one more statistic that I will throw out, in our district, in the last 4 years, our task force has had 80 federal prosecutions. Now, that might not seem like a lot compared to a state and local police department's arrest numbers, but to compare that, since 2000, so for 23 years in the state of Colorado, there have been 6 federal human trafficking prosecutions. So our task force is very busy. We have a lot of work to do. We're trying to bring on more task force officers, but we're continuing, as again, we're trying to be fluid, and we're trying to find new ways to investigate and discover parts of the market that have never been touched before.
You know, as heartbreaking as it is to hear the numbers, and again, it continues to be, mind-boggling from that perspective. What I so appreciate and all of the conversation that we've had is that there is an emphasis on bringing healing and redemption to the victim. I just think from a biblical perspective, we have the tendency to separate justice and mercy. And the reality is the Bible never separates that. They always go hand in hand. That with the heavy hand of justice and truth, that mercy always has to come alongside the victim as well. And I mean, I know with certainty that is unique, and I'm grateful that it is being expressed in how y'all are not only thoughtfully, and I'm glad we live in Texas and not Colorado, although I could use some of that weather right now, but I'm grateful that justice is being had, and at the same time, the heart behind that is to also lovingly walk with the victims. 38 months for a victim to be in that space, as you said, incredibly traumatic for them to stay in that space. And I hope you are hearing and understanding the value of partnership, because not any one entity can make this happen, which is why the people of God have to walk into this space as well. Well, Tank, you see this at a local level, and as I kind of previewed for parents and grandparents in here, I mean, we need to pay attention. I'm grateful for your leadership. I know that a couple of your detectives are members here, and I'm always thankful when I can bring some donuts. And like I said, I was really surprised, and some of your detectives even gave me a hard time in between services, how popular Shipley's Donuts is in comparison to everything else. And I will never make the mistake of bringing anything other than Shipley's, okay? So if you're going to bring donuts to the Crimes Against Children unit here in Arlington, man, don't be the church that brings something less than Shipley's, okay? But yeah, tell us a little bit about what you see and deal with here.
It's a privilege to be up here with these phenomenal people. And yes, Pastor, Shipley's is always welcome. We will never turn that down, so we appreciate that. One thing I want to touch on is just how in the last decade or more, give or take, human trafficking has changed. And when we try to identify what that looks like, well, it's the internet and social media. See, we're closing out 2023, about to approach 2024. Everybody here has a cell phone. So do our suspects. So do our victims. And when Chief Jones was looking to form this unit, he picked the absolute best. So from a community standpoint, you all can feel proud of having investigative detectives that are absolutely subject matter experts when it comes down to the online world, the crime that happens on the internet. What we have been seeing as these suspects are exploiting both our youth and our adults using the internet. You heard Jason talk about thousands of commercial sex ads being posted, active, live right now, that is being promoted through the internet. The number one thing I can encourage parents, those of you who have children, is be mindful of what's happening, what platforms are being used. Inform yourself on the dangers of that. I always tell parents, you don't give your 16-year-olds a set of keys and be like, go drive. We teach them. We take them through driving school. They get a permit, and then they start driving. Social media is the same way. And I touch on this subject because I see a lot of youth here today. You got to teach your children how to operate on social media safely. You know, that is something we pride ourselves in because we reach out to the community often. We're in schools, educating them on what social media is, what it looks like, and the dangers out there. You have to understand these suspects are masterminds at targeting our vulnerable population. You heard Chief Jones say, we don't really have many victims walking the streets anymore. That was a decade ago, folks. Those of you that grew up in this community, you've seen that on Division Street. We no longer have that. Human trafficking is a crime that hides in plain sight, and that is because of the internet. So always bring that up because it is something that's changing.
Is the Heat unit disrupting trafficking just locally right here? I know that there's great partnerships, but...
Yeah, so the number one thing, we don't sit and wait cases to land on my desk and wait victims to get victimized. We're proactive, and we run numerous proactive operations throughout every quarter of the year. We partner with amazing partners like HSI, Amanda's team, and Rescue Hill, because there's nothing more satisfying than being able to recover a victim or preventing somebody being victimized in this industry, so to speak. So we spend a lot of time on proactive efforts. Reactively, we ensure that our patrol officers, those people, when you call 911, that come out to your door or wherever you may be, are educated on this topic as well. We receive plenty of referrals from other agencies on this topic. So just being reactive is also a component of our unit. And then last but not least is awareness. Just like we're doing today, just talking to the community in a faith-based organization. Next week you may see us at a school. We may attend a corporate event, because we have learned that as long as we keep educating the community and having you guys understand what human trafficking is from our perspective, not from the TV's perspective or the internet's perspective, it is going to serve us well working together and to disrupt both the demand and also recover these victims.
I remember standing about a year and a half ago at the bottom of the Empire State Building and looking up and thinking to myself, how in the wide world of sports does something like this get constructed? And you feel really small, and questions just flood to the point of, if you really try to think about it, it becomes pretty overwhelming. And as I sit here on this panel and we hear about just the breadth of the problem and the need, I would imagine that a lot of us probably feel like we're standing at the bottom of the Empire State Building right now going, how do we address this? How do we deal with something so significant? And I think we've established partnership is essential. But, Chief Jones, for those of us that are sitting in the congregation, what are some of those simple yet effective and important partnerships that what can we do today that helps with this problem?
So I think we're doing it now. I believe that awareness, communication, and constant conversation. We have to make sure we're educating ourselves on this topic. We have to make sure that we're educating the young adults and young kids on this topic because it's going to affect them the most. We can't bury our heads in the sand and saying it's not happening or can't happen to us. Because it is happening in our community. So it's just about educating ourselves and making sure that we're having this conversation. And I'm just so thankful today we had an opportunity to have this conversation with you.
Well, thankfully, they have brought some information for us. And in the foyers after the service, there's information from Alliance for Children, Arlington Police Department, and Homeland. There's some great literature there. There's some numbers to call, some, next steps. Rescue Hill is out there. And again, probably one of the most practical ways that the church can engage is by going to Amanda's table and saying, hey, what's next? What's next? So let me encourage you to do that. But let me also just say thank you again. We can't even genuinely imagine or even rightfully perceive the things that each one of you see and deal with on a regular basis. The cesspool that human trafficking is, amongst the other things that you see on a regular basis as well. And I want you to know we're grateful, but we also are going to be prayerful. Men and women, they have families. They go home. They may try to articulate some of these things to their spouse. They have kids. They have friendships. They have other relationships. And to hold and to bear the weight of not only the things that they've seen and that they know, but then the execution of the justice and mercy that you've heard this morning, that's an incredible toll that we can't fully understand. So thank you, and let me pray over you and the incredible officers that are here this morning before I close things up. So would you give them another round of applause before I pray over them? Jesus, thank you for the calling out of men and women like what is before us this morning, who you have given not only a task, but you've given them a heart that loves your creation in such a way that they will care for and impact, walk with, bring justice to and justice for. The things that are righteous. Lord, would you continue to care for the victims in ways that we may not be able to see or know? Would you help us put feet to that as a church and other churches? Lord, I'm grateful that there are partnerships. The very fact that we are having a conversation with these men and women tell us that our community is different. And those relationships are different, and you want to leverage those in ways for your glory and for the shalom and peace of this community. So, Lord, would you bring healing to those victims? Would you bring justice to those victims? And then, Lord, would you also continue to protect and care for the minds and the hearts, the emotions, and just the physical being of these men and women who serve so faithfully, so sacrificially, and so diligently. Lord, would you continue to enrich their marriages? Would you enrich them as fathers and mothers? Would you bless them? And would you care for them? Lord, would you put them on our heart, and would you continue to help us see with your eyes the things that we have discovered this morning, so that we would be faithful to step into the dark places and hard spaces, just like you've called us to. In your holy and your precious name, amen. Amen. Thank you, men and women. Another round of applause, please, as they... Thank you again. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Jason, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Amanda's husband is a pastor, and I know she was sorely disappointed that she didn't get to hear him preach this morning. And so thanks for your grace. As I was, thinking through this week, how do you wrap a bow around this? And I came across a quote from the reformer Martin Luther, and he said this: "A religion that gives nothing, that costs nothing, and that suffers nothing is worth nothing." And in fact, I'm mindful that in recent days, as we study that first chapter of James, it clearly reinforces that sentiment, that we are not a vendor religion, we're a sent people. That God has called us out. He has designed us to step into the dark spaces and those hard places. In fact, I would encourage you that because these are gospel issues that we've talked about, everything from the opportunities in El Salvador to the caring of orphans and children in Matamoros, to bringing dignity and justice to victims of human trafficking, I would remind you that that's exactly where we're supposed to be as a church. That is the space that we're to walk in. In fact, if the church isn't running a redemptive operation in the backyard of hell, then we're probably not functioning as a church. Let me say it again. If the church is not running a redemptive operation in the backyard of hell, then we're not functioning as a church. I mean, we see Jesus, again, here we're talking about what it looks like to abide in Jesus, to become like Jesus, and to live like Jesus. For us to abide and become like him demands action on our part. It demands for us to step into those spaces that are difficult and hard. And when we look at the life of Jesus, I mean, that was the space that he was in. He was bringing redemption right there in the backyard of hell. And so make no mistake that this is exactly where we're supposed to be. In fact, as we prepare for next Sunday, let me just put the ball on the tee for you and kind of set it up real quick. And it'll be on the screen, but it's 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 9 and 10. And you've heard this before. Peter was writing to the Jewish diaspora, but what he was writing to them is no less true for us today as it relates to our calling. And he says this: "But you were a chosen race, you were a royal priesthood, you're a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that," I have a purpose clause there, a result clause, one of the two, "that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into the marvelous light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy." I know we talk a lot about just this idea of priesthood. And we look at this passage and we go, man, we have all sorts of rights and entitlements as the people of God. And let me just flip that for you, because that was not the intent of Peter. And are there, as a family of God, is there something familial that we are given? There's an inheritance, yes. But that passage isn't about the rights that we have. The passage is about the responsibility that we have to proclaim the excellencies of Christ. As a sent people, that means we've been commissioned. And whether we draw that conclusion from this passage I just read, or we draw that conclusion from Matthew 28, what we know is the Great Commission, and we're to walk in that way. I love what David Livingstone said as it relates to this passage. He said, if a commission by an earthly king is considered an honor, how can a commission by a heavenly king be considered a sacrifice? As the people of God, we're designed to walk in these spaces. This is what it means to live like Jesus. Pray with me.